Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. Today, as we do after each new ban list, we will be talking about the losers of the set 16 ban list. But first and foremost, I just want to say, guys, thank you all so much for the birthday wishes on Friday when the ban list came out. It just so happened to be the day of my birthday. I wasn't even going to make a video, but then we got hit with the ban list in the morning, so I decided to make the video on that day. Once again, thank you guys so much for the birthday wishes. It really did help me, have a really nice birthday, so I really appreciate that. Anyways, we'll get into the video. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. And if you guys want to help support the channel, there are many ways in the description that will help do so. But today, guys, if you guys want to get more competitively minded, maybe check out the Patreon down in the description. I'm going to be posting some articles there regarding the new format, new ban list, just my thoughts and whatnot, and probably some competitive deck lists going forward. If you guys want to check that out, you can even inquire about some coaching there if you're interested. Anyways, let's get started. All right, so I gotta admit, the losers for this ban list are pretty obvious. They really just hit the big three: Cell Surge, Icarus, and Gogeta Xeno. But I think in this video we can really get to the bottom of what can happen to the format because of these changes. And I mean, you gotta say, Cell Surge is probably the biggest loser of this ban list. Leader was outright banned. That's pretty obvious, but it really seems that there's just gonna be a hole in the format, and the hole is gonna be hand control. Hand control, at least I would say the common consensus of the community, doesn't really have a strong representative now that Cell Surge is gone. Think about it this way, right? Green was pretty much single-handedly being carried by Cell Surge. Then you had a couple of green road decks that could do decently, mainly King Cold, Green Gotenks, maybe one or two other random decks here or there. But if you look at King Cold and Green Gotenks, they're not really hand control decks. Don't get me wrong, they can incorporate some cards in the deck that can take cards from the opponent's hand. That just naturally kind of what green does in certain respects, but they're not full-on hand control decks like Cell Surge is, right? So even though these green decks can maybe step up and still maintain a rogue status, they're not true hand control. They're not going to be a green hand control deck like Cell Surge was. So with Cell Surge gone, is hand control, or at least a fully focused hand control deck, even going to be viable? Again, common consensus is that it's really not. I mean, what other leader are you going to play a pure hand control deck in? I'll tell you what, most of the leaders that you want to possibly play pure hand control, like Cell is basically green good card dot deck that revolves on hand control. So what other leader can you play that can house that same type of card pool? Most of those leaders have to attack the opponent, which is going to just make the viability of the strategy that much worse. Because the thing with Cell Surge was you never had to attack the opponent, so you could just passively take their hand away, and then once they were low enough on resources and you felt comfortable, you could just go in with crit, and they would never really be able to rebuild those resources. Also, if the opponent didn't have self-awaken, you were just controlling their awaken. You were absolutely controlling the tempo of that game. So there really aren't many green leaders that can satisfy this type of card pool, once again, that doesn't have to attack the opponent. Especially the fact that you're not going to have a leader that's able to be as consistent as Cell Surge, searching the top 5. That's just not going to really be a thing. And you're not going to have a leader that has such a busted ability on the backside that Cell has, which is resting all battle cards that come in play, or taking a card out of the opponent's hand and popping their board. Like, you might want to look at burst leaders like maybe Clash Goku, but again, the problem is you have to attack the opponent. You can't necessarily control your awaken, which is kind of a problem. But you do have that burst ability where you can possibly like burst rebrands, burst Sand Instincts, maybe some stuff like that. But yeah, as for a true hand control deck that can be, I don't even want to say dominant, maybe just like tier 1.5 or rogue, it's going to be really tough to fill that role. So this hand control as a whole, and I guess green in general, because green is definitely going to go back to just being rogue tier now, at least from the first looks of things. This is pretty rough for green for sure, in my opinion. All right, so moving on to yellow, my favorite color and my favorite leader. Man, what they did to this guy. Basically, if you guys don't remember, the errata just says pay yellow, draw a card, then you can play the skills from your drop area, and the activate battle can only be used during your own turn. Man, I hate this errata. It's just nothing resembling what the leader once was. They have to realize too, this isn't even errating the leader into a balanced state, it's just errating the leader into an unplayable state. So for all intents and purposes, just think of this leader as absolutely banned, because at competitive levels, this leader is just not playable. And of course, Power over Super Saiyan is limited to 1. My opinion why they didn't ban it, the art is just way too nice for this card to be banned and just collect dust in people's binders. But anyways, yellow does take a big hit here because its best leader was effectively again banned. There was serious discussion before the set 16 ban list as to whether or not Trunks was a better yellow leader for yellow good stuff deck. than Icarus. Now, I think the thing between Trunks and Icarus is that Icarus is able to consolidate more deck space because you really only had to play the 4 Higher Dragons to really take advantage of Icarus's crazy draw power. Trunks definitely wants to play a bit more of its main deck engine pieces to get more value out of what the leader does, but that's not to say that you don't want to do that. Those cards are still very solid and the leader can offer you a lot of value through those cards. But now the way that Icarus is, Trunks is just going to be by far and away the best yellow leader going into set 16. So this is not really a great big W for yellow diversity. So that's another way that yellow is going to kind of be a loser, but that's not really the fault of the ban list. It's more so just the fault of the way that these leaders are being designed. But yeah, yellow takes a big hit here. And the other thing with yellow too is that because Power of Super Saiyan goes to 1, your opponent is going to be a little bit less punishable for misplaying, which it is a good thing and a bad thing in a way. I think at the highest levels of competitive play, this is kind of a bad thing because you always want to make sure you can outplay your opponent, especially if they make a misplay, and the better player should come out on top, right? But on the other hand of that, Power of a Super Saiyan was really just a super broken card. It really just brought the entire color of yellow together because not only was it a free attack stopper that replaced itself, but it also just served as your extra cards to bring online Mecha Frieza, Robotic Riposte, Goku, Steadfast Assistance. So this is going to be a super solid consistency nerf to yellow. So the color should come down a peg. A lot of people are expecting blue to step up because it really didn't get hit, and green, again, hand control is pretty much going to be non-existent in the top tiers of the meta, at least as far as we can tell now. So yeah, this should level the playing field a decent amount, which is kind of interesting. But again, it does mean yellow is a big loser here because a lot of people considered yellow and Icarus to be the #1 deck in the format, even though there was a very considerable big 3. So yeah, yellow takes big hits here, and we talked about some of the ways that happens. So let's move on to black, mainly talking about Gogeta Xeno. Okay, so the interesting thing here is Gogeta Xeno technically saw more hits than any of the other decks in the color wheel here, but it seems like Gogeta Xeno might be the one that got tapped the lightest. So let's talk about this. Unreeling Assault Trunks is a consistency hit to Gogeta Xeno. Mind you though, I don't think this is a really big power hit to Gogeta Xeno because what Trunks was essentially an engine piece. It wasn't really like an aggressive tool or anything like that. It was more so just an engine piece, so that when you would use your fusion material, put them back in the drop, you'd be able to overwhelm Trunks. And yeah, you got that 15k attacker, which was cool, but you were mainly just using that to get your fusion pieces back into the warp to then be able to fuse again. And obviously the fact that your leader milled from the top of the deck into the warp allowed you to add Trunks to your hand. So Gogeta is probably going to just look for another 3-cost overwhelm to play here, but it's not going to be as consistent as Trunks because it won't just come to your hand if you mill it. Black Smoke was errata to basically become unplayable in the Gogeta Xeno deck, which is going to hurt draw power a little bit because this was one of the free overwhelms, or unisons rather, that you could play off of the Kai TP. Me and my teammates, we liked the Mirror unison because it offers a bit more, I guess, pressure and game ending power. So that or Pycon is, I guess, going to be the unison that people default to for Gogeta Xeno now because you can't play Smoke Dragon. But I know a lot of people did like Smoke Dragon because of the draw power it offered. Now keep this in mind, with Smoke Dragon being unplayable in Gogeta Xeno and Trunks being banned, Gogeta Xeno's not really going to have that crazy hand size anymore. There were some games where you could play against Gogeta Xeno, and if they were playing a bit more passively, kind of setting up to kill you, they could be at like 13, 14 cards in hand and just like sitting super safe while you're struggling just to stay alive. So with these 2 hits, again, that's going to be a big consistency hit to Gogeta Xeno because that type of hand size shouldn't really happen anymore. Now we have the unique effect added to Son Goku True Fighting Spirit, which is going to hurt Gogeta's viability against like these hardcore control decks where you just want to set up Goku as many copies of it as you can before you attack to really punish your opponent if they counterattack. So yeah, I mean, this is a power to Gogeta Xeno because you can't punish your opponent as much for playing defense, even though I think this is a really good hit. I think these are all pretty good hits for Gogeta Xeno, honestly, because I really think they do bring the power level down without killing the deck. I still think it's going to be a tier 1 deck. I still think it's probably going to be the best black deck in the format, unless something random like Hachiak takes over in some respect. But I really do think that Gogeta Xeno does fall down in power, but still remains tier 1, even though it is technically a loser of 3 cards, or at least some of their effects on the ban list. And then finally, guys, we're talking about Vegeta BR. This guy just got the short end of the stick because for some reason Bandai had to print his effect wrong and then clarify it with an errata. Basically, his optional cost is now no longer optional due to the errata. But this does set an interesting precedent, though, that if we ever see a leader like this in the future, because people were questioning how this actually worked. Could you really have an optional cost even though it came before the colon? Did that make sense? Would you have to pitch a card in order to resolve the rest of the effect? This sets the precedent that yes, if a card is worded like this, it is an optional cost. Now, don't ask me. I don't know why you'd ever add an optional cost to an effect, because unless it somehow benefited a player in a way, why would you pitch a card? It doesn't really make sense. So yeah, it seemed just like a little bit of a blunder on Bandai's part. But anyways, guys, that's gonna wrap up the losers of the set 16 ban list. Tomorrow we will talk about the winners of the set 16 ban list, and that's gonna be talking about a lot of different decks that you guys may not be thinking of in terms of decks that can kind of step up in the meta. So anyways, let me know in the comments below what you guys think. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.